So I'm going to talk about a situation where you've been sitting for a long time. And what happens when you sit for a long time is certain muscles in your body stagnate. So if I looked at your hip crease, if I looked at your hip flexors, if you've had to spend, say, 2 hours sitting doing some office work, or maybe even a whole day, 8 hours, what I would say is happening is your hip flexors have stagnated. So we're going to work through a little sequence to unstagnate and fix and sort of correct that situation of having to spend a lot of time in this position, which is going to affect some muscles more than other muscles. What you want to do to unstagnate your hip flexors is one of the strategies that I like to do is just take them, and you're going to take them through their full ranges of motion. You're going to fully shorten them and fully lengthen them. It's that simple for unstagnating those muscles. There's actually a lot of technique to your hip flexors. The technique I'm going to show you now is we're going to go into this position. So I pinned my knee on the ground, and if I place my hand on the front of my hip, there's my hip crease. That I'm going to pay attention to that getting lengthened out, so I might feel a little bit of a stretch there. But your hip flexors come from your leg, they wrap around your pelvis, come backwards and attach to the front of your spine. That matters for fixing stagnation of your hip flexors. So a lot of people, if they got into this position, what they'd want to do is they'd want to arc their body up, which is a good position, but it's actually not the best position for unstagnating your hip flexors. What you want to do is, with my hip pinned, I want to take my spine, and it's like I'm doing a sit-up. So I'm taking the front of my rib cage, I'm driving it down towards my pelvis, and then I'm taking my whole body and I'm driving it up towards the ceiling. So my body is rotating down and then driving away from the floor. That puts maximal length into my hip flexors, and that's part of what I'm going to do to unstagnate my hip flexors. That's one end of the exercise that we're going to do some work on. And then the other end is on all fours. We're going to take our knee. We're not going to let our pelvis tuck, and we're just going to take our knee and we're going to drive it forward, and then we're going to feel flexing energy. So now let's go into the sequence, how to fix up this hip flexor arrangement. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be a sequence of 2 seconds. So I've pinned my knee down on the ground. I've got a stretch here. I'm going to take my rib cage. I'm going to round it forward, drive it back, hold, 1, 2. I'm going to take my knee, I'm going to press it into the ground. I'm actually going to flex my hip flexors at length, 1, 2. I'm going to leave all of that long, leave my rib cage position, pick up, driving forward, shortening, shortening, shortening. I'm going to get into this position. My pelvis isn't going to tuck, and I'm going to bump into the shortest position I can with my hip flexors, drive forward, 1, 2, back, stretch, get the technique, rib cage down, rib cage back. That actually adds 1, 2, on a stretch, drive my knee into the ground, 1, 2, leave that length on my hip flexor, leg up, now, short, 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 short as I can get it, squeeze, drive my knee forward, 1, 2, driving back, stretch, get the technique, rib cage down, rib cage back, stretch, 1, 2, at length, pressing my knee down into the ground, nothing else moves, 1, 2, leave my hip flexor at length, press up, drive my knee forward, tight hip angle, 1, 2, and we just repeat. I go through finding proper stretch technique. I have to involve my rib cage, press into the ground, flexing the muscle at length, controlling the muscle at length, driving forward, tight muscle, 1, 2. And that is a fantastic, fantastic equation to fix up stagnation at the front of those hips, at your hip flexors for long bouts of sitting. You're gonna undo all of the messiness. Stagnation is the problem, so you're just taking that muscle, lengthening it as much as you can. That's technical. Shortening it up, that's technical. And doing work and creating a nice flow, putting 2 seconds of work and flowing through that whole thing. Give that a try. Your body's gonna thank you, and you're gonna have a fantastic result for those hips in the long run.